A small message from me before we kick off with today's video. iDriveAClassic is proud to be sponsored and insured by Adrian Flux. If you haven't heard of Adrian Flux before, they're the UK's leading specialist motor insurance broker, covering everything from classic and vintage cars right through to heavily modified sports cars. So whether you're in a Morris Marina, a 90s retro runabout, or something with a bit more oomph under the bonnet, give them a call for your next policy. I've popped a link to their site in the description box below. Hi guys, it's Steph from iDriveAClassic, and today I'm back with possibly one of the most interesting cars that I've been offered in recent times. It's this incredible Lancia Fulvia. It's very different to anything we've shown on the channel before, and I believe it's even our first Lancia, so all exciting stuff. And now I know there's quite a big following for these, so we're going to look at this in lots of detail today. Everything from round the outside, under the bonnet, so you can see that engine, because I'm sure many of you want to see that. And we're going to have a look inside, and we're even going to take it out for a drive. Very excited to take this car out, and remember, when it was sold, it was more expensive than an E-Type Jag. But was it worth the hype? Well, in today's video, we're going to give it a try, and we're going to find out. Popping this on Twitter was a really interesting one, because it was either a car that people adored or misnamed with comments like, "Nice Alpha." And unusually for a car on iDriveAClassic, it didn't get much grief, which might be because it's a car that absolutely lives up to every nice thing that you're ever going to read about it online. Many people call the Fulvia the last true Lancia, because it was the final car that Lancia made before it was taken over by Fiat, and the wonderfully decadent notions of putting styling and quality before profit, well, popped into the bin. Now, this wonderfully ingenious car is named after the Roman road to Turin, which is also called Fulvia, and it's a favourite amongst Italian petrol heads and Lancia aficionados. But actually, it's quite a good one to get into, because it's not commanding the massive prices of some of the really high-end luxe saloons or coupes, which is really why I wanted to show it to you today and say, heads up, this is one that I think is worth investing in, because this is a really decent example in my opinion, and it will set you back less than £20,000. Now, for those of you not in the UK, you might say, well, that sounds like a lot. But the classic market in the UK over the last couple of years has gone, wow, it's just gone crazy. And a decent Morris Traveller is now making over £10,000 on selling websites. So the £16,000 being asked for this stunning Fulvia, well, it makes it seem positively affordable in this increasingly costly world of decent classic cars. And in my opinion, one of the more impressive choices you could make for your Sunday classic. Now, it's just got something about it which I don't think you can truly appreciate through watching through this lens and through the camera, because until you get behind the wheel and experience it as a driver, you don't fully understand the Fulvia hype. And I think that, because I've taken it out a couple of times, every drive is an occasion in a Fulvia. There's no simple A to B boring motoring with this one. Now, the Fulvia is a car which was made in my favourite era of classic cars. It was made from 1963 until 1976, which is a fairly long time, but isn't commonly known over here. And of course, it came in to replace the Appia. But for those of you that like facts about parts and interchangeable bits and pieces, very interestingly, it doesn't actually share that much with the Appia. Now, you've got all you need in this car, because it's a Series 2 and it's a 1.3 engine under the bonnet, and it's got discs all round and a 5-speed box, which actually when you're driving, and I'll show you later on, feels wonderfully modern together in a way that many classic cars don't. And the engine, you might say, well, Steph, it's only a 1.3, but it's kicking out nearly 100 brake horsepower. So to give you something to compare that to, if you're into British cars like me, you want something more familiar, a Mark II Mini Cooper S is probably going to be getting around 60 to 70 brake horsepower on a good day, which really does drive home how well this 1.3 all-alloy engine performs. It is a V engine under the bonnet, as you'll see later on. It's a V4, but uses a single cylinder head because the cylinders were such a narrow angle, which was a really unusual design for the time, and for many mechanics it was a really unheard of idea. I wanted to mention that as we go because, as you'll see with this car, there's a lot going on, a lot of very interesting styling and design that really does mean that it lives up to the price tag. Now, on the styling front, if you're a Lancia buff, you'll notice that the headlights on this car are slightly different to the British cars. This is because regulations in the UK were slightly different, and this has been imported. And for those of you with an eagle eye, you've probably also noticed the headrests and wondered what's going on, but we're going to discuss that later on in the video because it's a very interesting fact which relates exclusively to where this car was imported from. Now, whilst we mentioned the styling, it would be positively criminal not to mention just how far attention to detailing on the styling really went. And as you'll see under this bonnet, you'll notice the engine is on a slight tilt. Now, there are two reasons for this. The first one is so that the bonnet line could be lower, creating much sleeker styling for the finished product. And most importantly, because the angle of the engine also helps to keep the centre of gravity lower for improved handling. Now, you might say to me, Steph, well, what's in a bonnet line? But let me take you back to the Austin Allegro and it will soon become obvious. Again, for Lancia buffs, you'll have noticed this already, but for those like me that maybe don't know too much about Lancia, the wheels on this example are very special. Now, they are an original and highly sought after Fulvia HF Chromadora magnesium wheel. So it's on all four corners, and when you buy them separately, make over £1,000 for a set. They're essentially competition wheels, with the magnesium making for a much lighter wheel. So there we have it, a little bit about the Lancia Fulvia. It's a great car, something that I've been very excited to show you for a little while, and one that you might want to do a bit more reading about. So there are many books online and wonderful buyer's guides. So if you want to become more immersed in the world of Lancia Fulvias, I would recommend you get yourself a copy of Lancia Fulvia Gold Portfolio by Brooklyn Books. Now, I have borrowed this off a dealer today, TJ. Fantastic lad, very interesting collection of cars. So with no further ado, I'll hand you over to Jess, who's going to take us through to TJ.
Hi, this is TJ Dolan from Dolan Classics. I am a collector and enthusiast and car dealer based in Macclesfield in Cheshire. And today we're going to drive a 1972 Lancia Fulvia Series 2 1.3. I've owned this car about 6 months. It's not something I particularly want to sell. It's kind of more my personal collection. However, it may well be for sale in the future, maybe very soon. But yeah, it's an absolute belter. I mean, the main thing about these cars is design. When they first came out, they were more expensive than the E-Type Jag. It's a 1.3. Just the sound of it, the drive of it, the condition of it, it's just amazing. So I'm a big fan of these cars. I've always wanted one, and obviously, famously, its bigger brother, the 1.6, won the Monte Carlo race back in the day, and that really popularised the car and made it a bit of an icon.
Now, as we talked about in the walk around, Lancia were all about style. So when we think about companies like Citroën, we think about, and I hate to use the word quirkiness, we talk about some of the weird and wonderful ideas that they had. But when we talk about Lancia, it's synonymous with the word style, because that is what they delivered in spades. And you can really see that in this car. Although I would have liked a little bit more room in the back of this coupe, because my poor cameraman is squished up like a little shrimp in a box, and today's filming is a little bit uncomfortable, so thank you very much. Now, talking about what we've got inside this car, we come back to that idea of it being very stylish, but at the same time, I think it really does deliver exactly what we need. Now, one of the first things that I know that you're going to spot at home is this gaping hole in the dash. And you're going to say to me, Steph, what should have been there? Well, there were two options. You could have either gone for a stereo, which would have been lovely, especially when you're going for a nice drive. Or if you're a little bit tight, because remember, this costs more than an E-Type Jag, you would have gone for the blanking plate. Now, TJ is desperate for one of these blanking plates. So if you've got one sat in your Lancia spares at home, please get in touch with me via my email address, which is in the description box below, and hopefully we can marry you two up and get that hole closed back off. Now, coming down from that, we've got that glove box there, pretty sizable for the size of the car. I thought it would be smaller, and it's also joined by a door pocket. Well, panel pocket, which is very handy. So for a very compact car, space and use of space is something that has been thought about. Now coming into the centre here, we've got our heater controls. Something that I particularly liked, and I thought, yes, Lancia really do think about the smaller, finer details, is when you pull the heater knob, it actually lights up. So you know that you've got that on. Coming down from there, you've got your vent. We've also got the cigar lighter there. Now our dash is very well laid out. To our left-hand side there, we've got our speedo. In the middle, we've got 3 warning gauges, and then on the right hand side there we have got a rev counter. Now it might seem very minimalistic, but when we think about it, does it really need that much more? There's a series of warning lights there. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we won't see any of those come up today, because plenty of people have told me that Lancias are incredibly hard to fix and complicated, so I am praying that nothing goes wrong on the test today. Now let me show you these 3 stalks. So the back one here, this is for our lights. So you'll see this, and this is very stylish. Look, it flips like that. That's your side lights. You pull it down, that's beam, and then you push that forward, pull that towards us. That gives you main beam. So that goes back into position, and then you've got your indicators here. My one criticism is these are very stiff. Now I don't know if they were stiff from you, that might be a characteristic, but using them today I feel very fearful that I'm about to break them, although they are a lot sturdier than some of the other 70s stuff I've taken out. We've also been joined by, and I don't know if you can see her, my assistant on today's video, Jess. She's been with us throughout the whole video, so if you're not a cat person, this video might not be one for you. And on the right hand side, we've got the wipers there. Oh, bye Jess. And you've got your electric washers as well. And that's pretty much what we've got in a nutshell. Actually, there's one thing that I forgot to show you, which was the ashtray. Oh, we need a bit WD-40 on that. But yes, again, chrome trimmed, very stylish, all wonderfully Italian and exactly what I expect. Now there is one thing which has slightly caught me out, and I'm going to show you, is this gearbox. So we're going to see what it'll be like when I go for a drive. But if you think about your normal gear pattern, it would probably go like 1, 2, 3, 4, up into 5th, down into reverse. That's kind of what I would expect. On this, it's reverse, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and then down into 5th, because we have got 5 gears on this. In fact, there's quite a lot of good stuff on this. We've got the 5 gears, disc brakes all round, that 1.3 putting out 100 brake horsepower. This car packs so much onto 4 wheels, it's incredible really. Now that's kind of the interior and talking about that, but if you're a Lancia Fulvia person, you're going to say to me, Steph, there's one thing that you have not mentioned, and it's such a small detail that you probably wouldn't have noticed it if you've never seen one before, and that is these headrests. Now these weren't an optional extra. These were actually issued at the time of sale, and it's because this car was sold in Switzerland. So this was originally a Swiss car, and when the regulations were around in those days, they dictated that cars at the point of sale had to have headrests. So these had headrests from new. But it also means that for a car that is notoriously known for being a little bit crusty, this one is exceptionally good, because they believe the Swiss MOT laws and regulations are some of the strictest in the world. So there you go, top tip for you. If you ever think about importing a car, maybe look to see what's on some of the Swiss for sale websites. So there we go. As we have it, the Lancia Fulvia inside, we've seen under that bonnet, we've looked around the outside, we've heard a little bit of its history, but is the hype going to match up when we take it out for a drive? Well, let me start the car up, you can hear what it sounds like, and we'll go and find out. That's not bad, is it? Now, of course, because it's an iDrive Classic test, I'll show you it from the back as well. So we're going to kick it off, we're into first gear, need quite high revs, and we'll give it a go. And just like that, we're up into 4th gear. I'm going to try at some point on the test and get it into that 5th gear for you. There we go. Now, one of the first things that strikes me about this car is just how incredibly smooth it is for the age of the car. Now, I know, of course, people at home will say to me, well, Steph, it wasn't a cheap car. I would expect it to be driving well. But would you expect it to be driving probably as well as it did new as it does today? Not always. I've seen some really ropey cars that were expensive at time of purchase, but after 10, 20, 30 or even more years of usage, just start looking a bit tatty and driving a little bit sloppy. But this Fulvia is really, really together. It's a very nice car. Now, the funny thing is it's a really odd driving experience because, of course, I'm driving on a side that I'm not comfortable with. I'm driving in kilometres, so mentally I'm having to convert the speed because in the UK, for those of you watching from abroad, we drive in miles per hour, not kilometres. And we've got that mad gearbox, which of course is staged as reverse, first, second, third, fourth and fifth. But because the driving experience itself is so pleasurable, you get lulled into a real sense of comfort, and it makes all the little things that are so alien to me a lot more manageable. When the Fulvia came to market, it came in to replace the Appia. But for those of you that are big on your Lancias, you'll know that unlike a lot of British cars that when they said, oh, this one's replacing this one, and we basically just reused all the same parts and redressed it into a new body shell, the Fulvia did something completely different because, as I understand it, it doesn't actually share that much with the Appia at all. So it's a very, very different car. So when we talk about the Lancia being stylish, and yes, it is a little bit fussy, I imagine to work on, it would be quite a mission. It's not as easy as a lot of other stuff this era. It feels very, very advanced. Now, let's talk about what I do and don't like about this car, because it's very different to what I'm used to, and I'm sure it's very different to what some of you at home are used to as well. Now, it's funny because if you'd called me at the start of this journey, I would have said to you, oh, I hate that gearbox, it's so hard. But actually, look, it's one of those things, you get into it, and once you get into the driving spirit of it and you've done a few gear changes, it's not actually that hard. In fact, it's one of the nicest boxes that I've driven on, and I think if it was on a side more familiar to me, and so if the gearbox was sitting on my left hand side, I think I would probably feel a little bit more comfortable. But hey, that's a very small complaint. Now, I think the only thing that really bugs me about this car and that would put me off it is the fact that there's no legroom in the back. Now, I know, of course, you can go for a saloon, but we are testing the coupe and we've got to give it a fair review as is sitting here with us today. I think the other thing that would put me off, and again, but just putting my mechanic's head on, is everything under that bonnet looks very fussy and complicated. And in fact, I know that a lot of people do say anyway that Lancias are quite difficult to work on or are a real art to learn how to get right. And unlike a lot of your BL tat that I'm so used to, you can't really have it running at half mast. It's got to be spot on, which for me, I think that would sound like it would probably break down quite quickly on my watch. Now, the things that I do like about this, the driving and seating position are absolutely spot on. I wish I could have you sitting here with me to show you it correctly. So in terms of my vision and my visibility, all round visibility, the seat is at a position where you can see to the end of the bonnet, which gives you real driver's confidence, as you might hope for. And as you can see, as we come around these corners, the handling is very tight and it's very precise in a way that cars of this era just weren't. It is a real luxury quality car. And it's funny because there are cars that I've taken out, things like the Rolls Royce, I've taken out other really coveted cars that people rave about. And you take them out and you think, what is the hype? But if you gave me this car and you said, I'm going to take the badge off it, and you have to guess whether it's an expensive car, middle of the range or budget, I would guess expensive every time, from the finish inside to the driving experience. Everything about this car screams luxury, it screams no expense spared. And for me, that makes it a true classic, and something which, if you get a chance to, you should definitely test out, or maybe if your pockets are deep enough, you should perhaps even own. So that's it from me today. I'm probably going to pinch this car off TJ for another hour or so, because I'm having an awful lot of fun, and it's just brilliant. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a lovely Sunday, and until next time, take care and drive safely.